Good evening. I'm calling the Tuesday, September 19th meeting of the Camarillo Planning Commission to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Davidson.
Present.
Commissioner Murphy.
Here.
Commissioner Lamone.
Present.
Vice Chair Edsel.
Here.
Chair Vandermeulen.
Here. Okay, and we will have Commissioner Davidson lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Hand over your heart and pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated.
As I opened the meeting, I did want to recognize we do have a lot of people, guests, residents here in the auditorium tonight, and I want to welcome you, and also welcome those of you at home that are watching. So our first item on the agenda are the consent items, which I just have one item here, and that is the planning minutes, meeting minutes from the last meeting. Did any of you find any corrections or omissions on those? Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, please vote. I just said. Got it. All right, so our next item is CUP 427 and IPD 249M for Foundry 805 LLC. Do we have a staff report?
Public comments first.
Oh, sorry. I didn't write it on my list, I apologize. Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda tonight? Did we get any cards? Okay, then I'm not going to open public comments for non-agenda items. Then we will go on to item for the Foundry 805 LLC. So if we could have a staff report, please.
Yes, Mike Cepek, our associate planner, will be making this presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Vandermeulen, Vice Chair Edsel, Planning Commissioners. Welcome to my presentation on CUP 427 and IPD 249 Modification 1. The request is to allow a restaurant and a craft distillery at an existing industrial building. The request is also to modify the existing two-story building by adding a third-story roof deck and a pavilion and an additional 10% reduction in parking. The site, shown here in yellow, is located in the corner of Avenida Caso and Via Pescador. It is slightly elevated, making its location somewhat prominent in the surrounding streetscape. So, in a little bit of a background, the Planning Commission approved the original IPD, the Industrial Plan Development Permit, at their November 15, 1988 meeting. There were no subsequent modifications to that building thereafter. Now, the existing building is a two-story building and is currently 100% office. The offices are currently mostly vacant. The building offers limited articulation. Its roof lines are linear and flat, and the architectural detail comes in the form of faux gables and some light blue colorway around the windows. The building footprint will remain almost entirely unaltered, with the exception of the recessed entryway, which will be filled in. The site will retain its two separate access aisles. The parking lot will be repaired and restriped and retain 68 out of the 69 spaces currently on site. The single 12 by 24 loading bay, which is located here on the side of the building, will be retained and will continue serving the location. The first floor plan will house a restaurant dining room and a kitchen, shown here in green, a small retail component, shown in pink, a centrally located research and development space, which will house the distillery component, shown in blue, and the remainder of the space will be used for conference space and warehousing. The second floor will largely be composed of the research and development element, again shown in blue, and will include a large research and development flex space, which is the space located here in the middle outside of the smaller office spaces. Additional conference rooms and warehousing will be provided on this level. Finally, the third floor will be composed of the restaurant patio area and the restaurant bar, shown here in green, and a warehousing space and a conference space, shown in 2 shades of yellow. This level will also contain a staff patio, shown in white. Now, the proposed architecture will be contemporary and industrial in nature. Although the elevations will remain mostly unchanged in principle, additional perceived articulation will be achieved with the use of mixed materials such as brick veneer, plasterwork, and a contemporary colorway. A pavilion-like structure will be added to the rooftop to further reduce the box-like appearance of the original design. Entryways will be accentuated with squared-off arches and metal overhangs, which will also serve as quiet nods to the otherwise Spanish-inspired architecture displayed across the city. Finally, the 2 exterior patios and complementary landscaping will filter and soften the building when viewed in the context of the streetscape. As mentioned, the materials will be consisting of a brick veneer, a cool gray colorway, some steel elements which will be utilized across the overhangs, and concrete plaster which will be utilized across the archways. The mix of square footage and uses required the project to originally provide 88 on-site parking spaces. However, with a 10% reduction under Camarillo Municipal Code 1968020B2, which the applicant applied for, the total number of spaces would stand at 79. Now, 68 spaces will be provided on site, with further 12 spaces allocated at the adjacent location at 4045 Via Pescador. The project will be conditioned to require the parking agreement, which will be recorded against the title of the property granting the additional parking. Oh, excuse me. So the site currently benefits and will retain a single 12 by 24 loading bay. The Camarillo Municipal Code allows restaurants and other special uses to have their loading requirements determined in line with the plan development or the conditional use permit. Based on the loading justification letter submitted by the applicant, it's been determined that the existing loading bay will be sufficient to serve the proposed project. Now, the project has been reviewed under CEQA and has been determined categorically exempt under exemption for infill development. This is because the location is less than 5 acres, it is surrounded by urban uses, it has no value as a habitat for endangered, threatened, or rare species. It is determined that the project will not cause any adverse effects on the environment and that the project is adequately served by the existing utilities. In light of the above, no further environmental review is required. The recommended action is to find the project categorically exempt from CEQA, and to approve CUP 427 and IPD 249 Modification 1. This concludes staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of staff? No? Yes.
Yeah, just a couple. And I'm thinking that the applicant will be able to explain the business incubator concept a little bit. It sounds exciting. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that with possibly some actual examples. Is the R&D, the incubator business, will that be operating in the evening as well, or be limited to daytime hours?
The building is subject to our standards, which do not necessarily prohibit it from operating outside of regular business hours. Of course, they're still subject to things like noise ordinances and nuisances of the like, but there isn't any requirement for the use to cease at a set time.
Okay. And then the parking reduction, I understand, is being addressed by the reciprocal parking agreement with the adjacent business. And we've had some discussion about this and how patrons to the restaurant would be, overflow parking would be directed to that adjacent building and not to other buildings. My understanding is that condition 109, which is a parking plan condition of approval, that the overflow parking signage would be included in that parking plan.
Yes. So conditionally, the applicant's required to submit a master sign program. Condition 107 specifically stipulates
107.
that. Now, the master sign program would be submitted for the review of the Director of Community Development or his or her designee. And in that master sign program, staff can certainly require directional signage, which we would normally consider as public convenience signage, which does require permitting under our municipal code, Title 17 of our sign, that contains our sign ordinance, and that can certainly be a requirement of staff as a provision in that master sign program.
That's great. I think that it should be, and I mean, it assumes success for the business. If the signage is required, that means the business is doing well. So, thank you.
Okay. Questions on this side? I apologize if I missed this, but did we have restaurant hours listed in the report as far as, are they going to be open for lunch and in the evening? Or is it just going to be like evening hours for the restaurant?
They were not listed in our conversations with the applicant. They're looking to serve the existing community of industrial developments. So they will be looking to provide early service and going on into the afternoons for a full restaurant menu.
Okay. So, and if they're open then for lunch and such, will they have enough parking if people have to drive from wherever businesses to come have lunch?
So the parking was analyzed under our standards. It's a function of square footage and type of use. In this instance, with a 10% modification, which under regular circumstances is a minor modification, the applicant meets the parking standards as defined in our municipal code.
Okay. It's just, I know, when that office was like fully staffed, that parking lot was pretty full at times, although that was several years ago, but.
The original office, or the original building was 100% office, which is calculated at a certain rate of parking, quite a high rate, in fact.
Right.
What helps in this instance is that although the restaurant use is certainly parking intense, there's other uses that work in offsetting that. So some of the warehousing, for example, by our municipal code requires 4 times less parking, for example, than office. So
Okay.
there's some mitigating circumstances there that, although some of the uses are a little bit more parking intense, others are less so.
Okay. And is this owner going to be doing any of their own beverage making, producing there, or is it only going to be for the incubator sites?
So the owner has a small distillery component, or is hoping to have a small distillery component. It would be located, if I bring up the site plans here, at the ground floor here, the blue square, the 800 square feet. See if I can show that here with the mouse. Now, most of the distillery operation would be in the adjacent building, which the applicant has a suite in. It's at 4045 Via Pescador, right next door. That's really where the bulk of the distilling is going to happen. What's envisaged for this space is more quality control, research and development into distilling methods, as well as a potential, more of a show still, something you kind of see maybe in a fancy distillery where they have all the shiny copper stills, I believe that's something that the applicant is considering doing too, but the bulk of the production would be not on site.
Okay. All right. I think that's all my initial questions. Everybody set? Okay. Then if we could, see if I can do this right. Could we hear from the applicant? Applicant's not here? Before? Okay, my list says after, sorry. Then I'm going to open public comments. Then we can hear from the applicant if the applicant is here to give us some more information. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Chair, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Joe Fiss. I'm representing the applicant, who's also here.
His mic's not on.
Oh. Now try it.
Okay,
Yeah, that's perfect.
there we
yeah.
go.
Thank you.
Honorable Chair and members
I
of the
do have a
Planning
list.
Commission, my name's Joe Fiss. I'm with TW Land Planning and Development, and we represent Foundry 805. Their representative, Dave Gross, is here as well. I can speak to some of the operational issues, and the applicant can speak to their business plan. We are here available for any questions, really.
Okay. No additional questions on this side?
Who would be answering to the operational, just the description of the business incubator and how that fits into the project?
Incubator questions, yeah. Mr. Gross can answer those questions as
Right.
to how he operates the foundry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm over there.
Up at the front.
Oh, come on up.
Hello, Commissioners. My name's Dave Gross, and my wife and I run a nonprofit, and this is a nonprofit business incubator, not to start nonprofits, but operate it as a nonprofit to incubate for-profit companies. So the point of the incubator is to basically provide opportunities where they might not be, to help companies go from a startup to a going concern. I have experience with multiple startups, multiple investments, multiple exits. What exactly will be in there, we don't quite know, right? Like, that's sort of the reality of it. I have a lot of experience in software as a service. I'm a mechanical engineer. We have electrical engineers involved. There's the ability to do things like prototype as well as get legal advice. And so the goal of the space is to basically placemaking, if that word means anything to all of you, if you've heard that term, basically provide an opportunity where a new young investor from one of our high school programs like RC Makes at Rancho Campana to an existing small company that might be looking for help to someone starting a CPA firm. I mean, it could really be kind of anything. The goal is to provide a suite of services that include things like software and hardware prototyping and marketing and obviously business advice and things like that. The operation of the incubator is that those that kind of go beyond sort of the, I'll call it learning or education phase of learning about a startup, if they become incubees as part of this facility, they're not paying for the space, they're not paying us any fees, but we own a piece of, it's for equity. It's basically incubation for equity for the nonprofit, to grow the nonprofit, to do more incubation for equity, if that makes sense. That's the whole point of it. Yeah. Any other questions?
That's, I know for me, that's totally different than what I had
Yeah,
pictured because,
that's really, really interesting. Is it mainly consultation, or are there actually things that would be produced in the building?
For a hardware startup, there are things that would be prototyped to the level that they would do potentially limited production. It's not really that much space. It's not really designed for that. But at the same time, we work with a lot of students, and we work with everything from arts and crafts to clothing to technical startups, water purification, all kinds of different things. And so it's a little bit hard to predict. And ideally, a space like this would be 10 times bigger in a larger city, and they exist. And that's really what this is the North Star of this is larger incubators in large cities and creating a place, including the food service establishment, where people want, to come and be there. So would someone if someone's at the point where they've outgrown what we can provide them there with respect to space or manufacturing capabilities, that's exactly what we want to happen.
All right, that's fascinating. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Are there any of those nearby, the similar concept? I don't think there's any in Camarillo, is there?
There are none in Camarillo. There are incubator-like opportunities that are co-working spaces, perhaps better described in Ventura and Westlake. The closest would be Los Angeles, really, and Santa Barbara, unless you know of anything else, Mike. Pasadena. So we think we're providing an opportunity that also fulfills an unmet need. And we have people here from the career education community, which is we're tying together career education and entrepreneurs, and people here from the entrepreneur community. And this is something that when I started to talk to people in the entrepreneur community locally about it, several years ago, I was looking at another property, and we ended up with this property, which is fabulous. It was like, this is what we need. We need a place that can provide those kinds of services and space and flexibility and backed up by, ties to funding, ties to venture capital, for example.
Two questions. Are you partnering with any local schools, colleges, or other organizations? And two, based on, I'll ask you the second question, then you can answer them in any order you want. And the second is, how many projects can you incubate at a time based on space and your capacity to support with services?
I'll answer the second one first. That's a really good question. Things that are, like if it was intense and it had a few people and it had stuff, not that many, maybe a dozen would be like full, I would think, given the way the space is structured, especially the second floor. But we have a lot of things going on at a lot of high schools in the county that are all entrepreneurship programs that are active at Rancho Campana, at Foothill, at Santa Susana, others starting in Oxnard Union High School District right now, including CAM. And so the connection between what's on site and what's happening remotely, as we've all learned, not by choice, over the last 4 years with COVID, is that really is blending together. So the real answer to that question is physically on site, it's not that big of a space, but the connection of people to it who are potentially getting something out of it, even locally or even not even in Ventura County, we think that that's very real over time. The first question is yes, many. We have been for a very long time. Dr. Morris is our new executive director, and she basically built career education in Ventura County 10 years ago at the Ventura County Office of Education. And so we are very much filling a void there as well, with a lot of that funding had gone away before COVID. And so it would be a very long list to talk about. Kind of pretty much most every school district in the county, not all of them yet. Boys and Girls Club, the library, Chamber of Commerce, et cetera. So there were already some connections, and part of Dr. Morse's role is to, make a programmatic approach that's worthy of this type of facility. Bring that together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good question.
Sure.
The combo of this space and a restaurant, is the restaurant a fund generator, or is that meant to simply enhance the environment and provide a kind of a cool niche thing to do as well?
That is an excellent question. We will find out. But the goal is that if the restaurant can break even as part of the nonprofit, think of it like a decent restaurant at a museum, better than a cafeteria. It's part of what's going on there. But given that we want to support the local environment right there in the morning and afternoon with what I would call a cafe, the outside downstairs, and then, the rooftop, not fine dining, but, a dining a restaurant experience in the evening, tied to the distillery components as well. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What's the question again?
So, is there as part of the it sounds like,
Oh, are we going to make money? Okay, so
I mean, you want
is
to.
the restaurant going to make money? If the restaurant breaks even, that's a win.
Okay.
If the restaurant does better, that's a win. But the actual real value of the restaurant, which we haven't even really talked about yet, is we talked about what the kinds of things we would incubate is. Well, it's not just a restaurant. I mean, yes, it's a commercial kitchen that supports a restaurant, but it's also a commercial kitchen that supports sort of chef of the month, culinary entrepreneurs. So if you're familiar with Oxnard College, for example, in the program they have there, and if you were a young, aspiring restaurateur chef and you are like, I can't open a restaurant, but I've got this dish that everybody loves, and hey, what if I could get it into supermarkets? Long shot. But point being is being able to come in there, have some funding support as an incubated culinary startup, serve the food in the restaurant. It's you, it's under your name, it's specific to you, and we'd be like, hey, if it sells, you're good. If it doesn't, we'll just let the market decide whether people like your product. And then if we like it or others, do we know, can we introduce you to someone who does, frozen food or whatever. I'm just kind of, making this up. But point being is that having a culinary piece to the entire startup environment is also part of why there's a restaurant there. So it's a number of different reasons tied together, and in a lot of ways, it really is, I think, what will make this work. That may sound like a stretch because it's not tech, it's not startup, it's not funding, it's not venture capital, it's a restaurant. But it's really, I think, going to be a lot more than that.
Okay. I want to push back on that a little bit because the incubator exists on the second floor, and then you have
Correct.
two-thirds of your physical space is dedicated to something that doesn't, I mean, yes, it incubates a piece of your pie, pardon the pun, but two-thirds of your building is going to be dedicated to something that's a very small part of the incubation. It just seems a little out of ratio.
The restaurant is a very small portion of the total square footage.
Oh, it is? I
Yeah,
apologize.
It's the green at the top.
I guess the colors are so similar in my
Yeah, no,
my
it's
advanced
conference
age.
rooms, warehousing, et cetera. It's really, I don't, Mike, maybe you could, I don't actually remember how much square footage we ended up with to meet parking.
Sure. I can bring up the parking table, but really we do have it here in our plan. So the green, which again, it is, I appreciate it's kind of similar to those yellows. This is the downstairs portion of the restaurant here.
Okay.
We have the customer area, and this is the commercial kitchen. So it's half of that space downstairs is the commercial kitchen.
Okay, thank you.
And then we will cycle up to the third floor, which contains this patio element here in green again, which would serve the restaurant itself.
Okay.
Anything in between those is largely related to the research and development application, outside of minor things like stairwells and utilities and whatnot, which are delineated here for reasons that are related to parking requirements.
So let me rephrase that then. Your innovative use of restaurant space combined with your incubator is really impressive.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Very well said. I'm even more excited to hear that it does have the kitchen facilities, because I know a few years ago I read an article that said that the closest incubator kitchens to here were down in Los Angeles. And I had a couple of friends that were trying to do some baking and cooking and stuff and trying to get it into the commercial market. And they really had a difficult time, one, getting their home kitchens approved to even produce something to try it, to get it out into the market. So, I mean, that adds, another addition to it, of interest that isn't located here. Something that I've been interested in seeing come into the area for quite a while. So,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Anything else I can answer?
Any
Thank
other
you for your time.
questions? Thank you. Then we'll go to public comments, which I do have some speaker cards. And I will call you just in the order that they've been given to me, and you will have 3 minutes that you'll be able to see the time up here when it's counting down, and it'll give you some beeps when you're getting close to, I think, a minute, and when you have to kind of stop talking. So, first one I have is Nancy Lindholm. And if you'd state your name and give us your comments.
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Nancy Lindholm, President and CEO of the West Ventura County Business Alliance, which is the Chamber of Commerce serving the communities of Camarillo and Oxnard. We're really excited about this project. I think this is fabulous. I love the concept. I think it's something that's definitely well needed in Ventura County, especially the western portion. And I know that you've all read your staff reports and whatnot. I just wanted to point out a couple things that were in there that the staff says. The proposed design, in keeping with the scale and character of the adjoining sites surrounding the buildings, whatnot, is great. The proposed design includes a variety of colors, textures, materials. I've seen the renderings. They're beautiful. The proposed project creates a high-quality incubator character, and also proposed project benefits from an existing conforming access provision and will comply with the relevant standards of parking and loading. Finally, the proposed project has been adequately conditioned to ensure compatibility with the surrounding uses. So to add to that, in looking at the city's economic strategic plan as well, some of the things that are mentioned in that are supplement resources for entrepreneurs, nurture entrepreneurs, also with quality of life. Entrepreneurs tend to expand options for others. So I think this really fits with what the city is trying to do. And finally, also from the strategic plan, high priority initiatives in the plan include incubation acceleration activities in coordination with private organizations actively focused on enhancing the local startup environment, and I think that's what's before you tonight. We support this project and hope that you will too.
Thank you. Next up, and I'm having a little trouble reading the last name, Dave Grode? Okay, so we've already heard from you. Thank you. Next up is Joseph Fiss. Okay, that one's up too. How about Roberto Martinez?
Madam Chair, Planning Commission, City Staff, Roberto Martinez, resident of Camarillo. I'm here to speak in support of Foundry 805. I first learned about the NewCo Foundation several years ago when I saw what they were doing with Rancho Campana High School, and it really fit into some of the career pathway elements that the Ventura County Office of Education was trying to achieve, helping kids identify different pathways for success through manufacturing or different, things that kind of, that they find interest in. So, full disclosure, I'm CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Camarillo, and that's a big interest of ours as well, is how do we support these kids moving forward to these different career pathways, and we are fortunate to connect with the NewCo Foundation, and, so I think with some of the things that we're seeing with Foundry 805 in terms of how it really moves the needle for, innovation and development and entrepreneurship here in our city and the economic development opportunities that it creates. I think it's a real winner for our community, and also just the Gross family is already invested in our community with the stuff they're doing with the high schools, with the Miracle League of the 805, with the Boys and Girls Club. So I think in terms of a group that is already invested and committed to making our community better and achieving the goals of our city, then I think it's a great benefit, and I'm in full support, and I hope everyone else is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Philip Seiflein. And I apologize if I didn't get that pronunciation quite right.
My name is Phil Seiflein, and I'm a longtime entrepreneur and innovator myself, and I've followed some of Mr. Gross's work the shirt that he has on says RC Makes. If you're all familiar with that fantastic lab at RC High School here in Camarillo, it's part of his inspiration. As an innovator myself, I know the common trend now is to have an enclosed place for creativity. And it's really a good thing. I know people that will be very interested in going to this location. And once you start working, you want to keep working. You want that environment that is designed to keep you from jumping in your car and going 5 miles away for a break and then coming back. You'd like to stay where you are. So anything that supports this project, I would be in great favor of as a person who's been down the path myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next up, we have Sean Mulchay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sean Mulchay. I'm a former City Council member, former Entrepreneur of the Year when I was much younger, and a current business owner. I know Mr. Dave Gross. I've had the opportunity to see this project grow and expand into what it is today, and I'm a proud supporter of it. I think this is going to be a third place and an intersection of so many different things for so many different people. It's going to create a lot of opportunity in our community. When I was young, when I started my first company, I had to found it. I found it in the coffee bean and tea leaf in Arneal because I had nowhere else to go. If something like this were an opportunity for me, this is to be the first place I go and get the support that I needed then. So I proudly support it, and I hope you approve the recommended action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. So is there anybody else that wanted to speak that did not turn a card in? Okay, if we could have you come up, but also bring a card with you so that you can fill it out, please.
Can I fill it out after I speak?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Eric Wendt. I wear a couple hats in town. I have a joint lab with the Navy called FathomWorks. I work with the EDC, and I run a small venture studio where we support small entrepreneurs. I'd like to give you a little different vision, right? I have 2 young daughters, right? And what I can see this space growing up, right? I want them to go take a code class, right? I want them to do an internship. I want them to go to one of our fine universities and work there in internships, and then start their own company and be able to see other people in the community starting their own companies, other girls doing amazing jobs, starting companies and entrepreneurship. I want to share a drink with them in that restaurant, right? I want them to grow up and be an investor in the area too, and then go back and invest in companies started by somebody else's daughters, right? That's what this represents. I come from Silicon Valley. This was a thing. This was an active part of my daily lifestyle, starting companies up there, including the restaurant. Like, that's the unsung hero, right? Many of these meetings happen in that coffee shop, in that restaurant down the way. I can already tell you that space permitting, I will be a tenant, I will be a customer of the restaurant, and I could not more avidly express my support for this program, and I hope you guys do too. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. All right, so no other public comments, so we can close the public comment section and we can go to commissioner comments.
So I really meant it when I said innovative use of restaurant space. You know, it seems pretty special, and I'm new to the board, or to the commission, but it seems pretty special when you have a community come together so comprehensively as this to support something that seems to benefit so many people on so many different levels, you know, sons, daughters, you know, young people who are trying to make it and maybe just don't have the direction. It just sounds like a wonderful place and a good use of land in our city, so thank you.
You okay? Any comments?
Yes, no, just to echo what Commissioner Davidson just said, it looks like a wonderful project, a wonderful business to bring to our community, and I can easily support this application.
And I really appreciate the input from the applicant and from the public today, because we had a nice report, and I realized I didn't fully understand it, that now I do. And it looked good on paper, but it even seems a lot better after hearing everybody's comments and testimony. So I fully support it as well.
Yeah, I also believe this is an innovative and unique project. I appreciate the opportunity to learn about it. And you can feel the energy here, and I am looking forward to going on site one day and feeling that energy of innovation and of the opportunities that it will create. I think it will bring multiple contributions to both the local and broader community, and I'm also in strong support.
Thank you. And I neglected to say when we were having public comments that we also received, if I counted correctly, 17 written comments that came in that were all in favor of the project. So could we have the architectural review, please? Report.
Oh, we do. So Mr. CPAC made a wonderful presentation on what the building looks like now versus what it will look like should this project move forward. It incorporates colors and textures, materials, height and massing of the building that are consistent with the Camarillo community design element general plan guidelines. What we were especially impressed with was the use of contemporary colors and materials in a way that seems to add a tremendous amount of articulation to the building, where architecturally there is none, essentially. The building is the same footprint, will be the same horizontal footprint as what is out there now. But when you look at what's there now versus what is proposed, it's a tremendous aesthetic change for the better. And so we could easily support and recommend to the Planning Commission approval of the architectural elements of this application.
Thank you. Yeah, I know for me, driving through the area and looking at what looked kind of bland, and then seeing what this is going to bring into the area, hopefully it'll even bring some changes to make that whole area a little bit more interesting. It also reminded me of a trip I did take a few years ago up through Kentucky for the horse country and stuff, and driving past a lot of the distilleries there were all these big black buildings. So it kind of brings in a little bit of that feeling that I found over in Kentucky to our area, which I find very interesting and kind of nice to see. Any other comments? And I will say for me, I'm really happy to see what you're planning for this building and what you're going to bring into the community, because this type of space is something that I've wanted to see come in for a long time. So it's nice to know that it's here. It's going to be working, and especially so much with the schools and people that can really learn and grow and build from this and be able to hopefully bring us products that will stay in the area. So, anything else? You want to?
Call for resolution?
Resolution number PC 2023-20, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving a conditional use permit for a bona fide food establishment and a craft distillery, a major modification to an industrial plan development permit to expand the existing building, and a minor modification to an industrial plan development permit for a 10% parking reduction located at 900 Avenida Acaso.
I'll make a motion that we move further reading and vote for adoption.
I'll second.
Okay, please vote. And that unanimously passes. Thank you. And thank you all for a great presentation on this. Very informative, very interesting. So we'll okay.
So when they talked about all this warehouse.
I thought it did look bigger to me too, because the color scheme was pretty similar.
Well, then the warehouse, restaurants need warehouses.
Okay. I think we'll just go ahead and try to start up on our next item. Okay, so we're going back, and if we could quiet down a little bit as you're exiting. Going on to item C for CPD 36M, Arneal Pharmacy, and do we have a staff report? Or can we
Yes.
have the staff report, please?
Yes, our Assistant Planner, Brett McMahon, will be making the presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Chairwoman and Planning Commission. My name is Brett McMahon, and tonight I'll be giving the staff presentation for CPD 36M1 Arneal Pharmacy. Sid Mahdi Rezvan is requesting a modification to a commercial plan development permit to construct a new 1,650 square foot second-story addition, exterior remodel, and interior tenant improvement to convert an existing vacant medical office into a delivery-only pharmacy and office suites. Project location: the proposed project is located on a third of an acre site at 195 and 197 Arneal Road. It shares a zero lot line with the neighboring property to the north, and there is a separation wall in place between the two buildings. The site is located within the Camarillo Commons mixed-use zone and is also within the Camarillo Commons strategic plan area and the Camarillo Heritage Zone. Just some background on the property. CPD 36 was originally approved by the Planning Commission in 1976 as a commercial building. The building has remained untouched since its initial construction and has been occupied by a wide variety of commercial uses over the years. The most recent use of the building was as a physician's office. So the proposed operations at the facility, the applicant intends on operating a delivery-only pharmacy, which will package medical prescriptions on-site and deliver prescriptions to clients' residences throughout Ventura County. There will also be multiple office suites that will be available to be leased out to other office buildings within or office uses within the same building. Going into parking and loading, pursuant to State Assembly Bill 2097, the project is exempt from parking requirements due to it being within a half-mile of a train station. The project site does include an existing 18-space parking lot, and this will be slightly modified as part of the project. But this modification will be limited to relocating the existing accessible parking space to a location much closer to the building entrances, and will also be adding in a accessible path of travel and a second accessible space. The parcel is also not required to have a dedicated loading space due to square footage being below 5,000 square feet. Moving into the site plan here, the building footprint is not going to change at all as part of this project. And then the only other changes that are going to be occurring on the parcel is the trash enclosure is going to be, trash enclosure and landscaping is conditioned to be brought up to conformance with our modern, or our current landscape and trash enclosure standards. And then also the relocation and addition of an accessible parking space. Just quickly running through the proposed floor plans. On the first floor, on the top part there, you can see there's going to be 3 separate entrances along Arneal Road. Each of these entrances will have access to a staircase to get to the second floor offices. If you look at the second floor plan, each of those offices are separated. They're not connected to one each other, so they can all be used independently. Going into the building elevations, here's the east elevation, which faces Arneal Road. You can see that this building's getting a major facelift. The tower element is going to be enhanced to conform with the new height of the building. It'll be raised up to 31 feet in height. And then as for the rest of the second floor addition, it'll be brought up to be level with the current section of second floor in the existing building, which is has a height of 25 feet. And then there'll also be a change in the roof gable on that far right side, and as part of one of the new offices. Looking at the west elevation, this is in the back portion of the building where the parking lot is. This is going to be enhanced to have a discrete design to protect the pharmacy use. It'll also revamp the exterior to have a much more aesthetically pleasing look. And then here on the south elevation, this is the portion of the building that faces the existing Burger King. You can see the second floor addition will bring the wall all the way up to the edge of the building, and it'll get a couple new windows installed there. On this angle, you can see the enhancement of the tower element with the second floor addition, and then there's also going to be a green wall on the side of this, or on this portion of the building as well. Environmental review, the city reviewed the environmental impacts of the project under the CEQA and finds it exempt under section 15-301 existing facilities, which exempts existing facilities from further review due to negligible expansions of existing uses. The proposed project will increase the building floor area by approximately 1,650 square feet, which is only 47% of the existing floor area, and to be considered a negligible expansion, those thresholds are 2,500 square feet or 50%, whichever is less, which this project is below those thresholds. The recommended action is that the Planning Commission finds that the proposed project is categorically exempt from CEQA under section 15-3001. And staff recommends adopting a resolution approving CPD 36M1 subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This includes staff's presentation on the item.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
No questions.
No, just a comment on, I noticed that there was no public notice for this application. My understanding is that there was no need for a public notice because this is a CPD, not a CUP. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
I know it's exempt from parking because it's near a transportation center, but if it wasn't, what would how many parking spaces would be required? Just to get an idea of the.
Well, for medical uses, the parking calculation's one space for every 200 square feet, but given that the mixed commercial uses of this property, the office threshold's like 1 for 250 square feet, and given the 1,650 square feet, we believe that this project would still be adequately parked. It also shares a parking lot with a neighboring parcel to the north where some overflow parking could be directed if necessary.
Yeah, I think Paul calculated, I thought, what would it be?
Yeah, so the calculation would be only 12 parking spaces would be necessary.
So even under that standard, we have 17, so, and then there's the shopping center next door, like you said, so,
Right.
okay. Just to kind of see where we're at, thank you.
Was there, from looking at it then, for the office space upstairs, there's no entrance from the parking lot? They have to come around to the front and go in from Arneal?
That's correct.
Okay. And is that all just going to be like 3 separate tenants? That's not going to be the owner of the building using those office spaces?
That would be a question for the applicant.
Okay. All right. Any others? Okay. Then we're not doing a public hearing, right? Any public comments? Do we have staff? Is the applicant here? Could I have the applicant come up for a minute? Or is that?
Sure, you can. Yeah, just have them fill up the card, please.
Honorable Chair and Commissioners. I guess it's good, yeah? You hear me. I'm Sid Rizvan, and I'm presenting Mr. and Dr. Neshat, the owners of the project. The presentation that staff made was really clear, and I'm here to, if you have any question just about that 3 different offices that you asked for. The middle one is connected to pharmacy at
Okay.
first floor and going to be used by the owner. The 2 other offices, based on the use they have, if they need to use that office, they can use that for themselves. Otherwise, they are separate office spaces that can be rented to prospect, prospect businesses, which mainly going to be kind of connected to the same use that they have. But
Okay.
it can be office space.
Okay. So a little bit, could have a couple outside tenants come in to rent those spaces?
Yeah.
And is is the whole first floor then being used by the main owner?
Pharmacy, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, those are the questions I had. Did you have?
It's a delivery-only pharmacy?
Yeah, actually, the correct term that they use is long-term or closed-door pharmacy. And it's, to me, it's as an architect, it's a fascinating kind of technology. I love that because, first of all, that's green. You don't, instead of 20, 25, 50 people drive to the pharmacy and get their prescription. Just one delivery guy comes and get all those deliveries and deliver to the clients or patients. There's more time to adjust everything and inspect everything. So basically, it's not my opinion. It should be the expert's opinion in that field. But there's less room for any delay or error machines or whatever. And also, imagine if we make that a regular pharmacy with people walking, it's gonna have more traffic load, more noise and everything to the neighborhood. So at the end of the day, it's, I guess for the neighborhoods, it's way better than a traditional pharmacy that we used to have. In different places, that was the existing use was medical office. It wasn't pharmacy, though.
Thank you.
And I didn't see anything that you're not doing any compounding of pharmaceuticals there? Is it just all deliver in and deliver out?
Not at all.
Okay. Okay, I didn't have any other questions. Thank you. No other questions of staff? Then I believe we have a architectural report on this one also?
Yes, we do. Thank you. Mr. McMahon made a nice presentation of the architectural elements for this building, and they, again, using the same footprint of the building, will have, there will be substantial aesthetic improvement to the building with use of Spanish-style architecture, clay barrier tile roofing, cement plaster finish, and accent metal details. It will adhere to the design guidelines of the city's heritage zone. The one concern, if you can call it, is that the building will grow a little bit upward, but the ridge line will stay the same. It will be lengthened a little bit on either side. The tower will be a little bit higher. I was concerned about what sort of impact that might have on the adjacent residential development to the west, but in looking at the elevations, and the building is on the far side of the parking lot, on the far side of the property, it appears to me that the visual impact will be quite minimal. So with all of that, the Architectural Committee can recommend approval of the architectural elements to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Questions on the architectural? Okay. I do notice, looking at it, I hadn't really, as much as I drive up and down past it, hadn't really ever really looked at that building. I looked at like the Mexican food place that I haven't been in yet that I need to go visit, and then on down to the corner, and how you just kind of drive past it and don't notice it. But I think this is going to really make a nice aesthetic addition to the street, and also leading into future looks of that area as we rebuild that area, hopefully in the future. So, okay. Then we can call for the reading.
Resolution number PC 2023-21. Resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving a major modification to a commercial plan development permit located at 195 and 197 Arneal Road.
I'll make a motion to waive further reading and vote for adoption.
I'll second.
Thank you. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. So then we will go on to item D. Application to construct accessory dwelling units at the Allure apartment complex. Staff comments, please, or staff report.
Yeah, so before we continue the Brett McMahon show, I just kind of want to, kind of set the stage here a little bit. So with this item, it's a little unique. There's no action from the Planning Commission here. The recommendation is, as you guys probably saw, to receive and file. But this is one of the first multifamily ADU projects that we received, and it's handled at the staff level. So since it's so unique and so new, recently being put into state law, we wanted to make sure that the entire community is aware of what can be done, and how it could one, achieve some of our housing goals for the city, but also have some kind of unintended consequences, like parking and stuff like that. So we really want to get the word out. We want people to be aware of what's being proposed, in the neighborhoods that they live in or in the projects that they live in. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our assistant planner, who will go more in detail of the project that's being proposed.
Good evening, Honorable Chairwoman, Planning Commissioners again. My name is Brett McMahon, and I'll be giving the staff presentation on the Allure Apartments ADU proposal discussion. Before I get into it, the purpose of this presentation is to inform the Camarillo Planning Commission and the public about recently implemented state ADU laws, and to provide more information on our first submittal for or as submitted ministerial permit application subject to the provision of newer ADU laws at the Allure apartment complex. Some background: on July 26th of 2023, the city received its first multifamily residential ADU application consisting of more than one new unit. The proposed project is at the Allure apartment complex, which is located at 390 Paseo Camarillo. And the existing apartment complex currently occupies a 6.25 acre site. Consists of 165 apartment units spread out between 7 three-story buildings. And it has 165 vehicle garages and 190 open parking spaces on site. To provide more background, the proposed ADU project will include the conversion of 37 existing resident vehicle garages into 15 new ADUs. 6 of these will be studios, 9 will be one-bedrooms, and these units will range in size from 490 to 771 square feet. And also 5 of the 15 ADUs will come attached with outdoor patios. The addition of new landscaping that will protrude into the existing drive aisles of the complex will also be included in the project. There will also be modification to 8 existing courtyards throughout the complex, and the submittal included a proposal to close off a dead-end drive aisle that will no longer have garages along it. Here's a location map that shows where the Allure apartment complex is located within the context of our great city. All right, so here we have the proposed site plan. If you look at the top one is supposed to be the existing conditions, and the bottom's what's proposed. If you look on the buildings with the dashes around them are where proposed changes are going to occur. Specifically, most of the ADUs are going to be installed on the westernmost portion of the complex in buildings 340 and 360. If you see the dashed lines with the called out plan note type A, type B, and type C, those are the different ADU models they're going to include. And you can see that they typically tend to be on the edges of the buildings up there. And then also on that left side, you can also faintly notice the markings of the closure of the drive aisle and some of the new balconies that are going to be installed. And then this is an example of what some of the changes will look like in the context of the buildings. So this is building 340, which is one of the ones on the western portion that we highlighted in that previous slide. And then on here, you can see the 2 studio models and then the 2 one-bedroom models. And in this building alone, there's going to be 10 garages lost to form 4 new units here. All right, so moving into California ADU law. In recent years, the state of California has passed a series of legislative acts to promote the streamlined construction of ADUs and to limit the local government's ability to regulate ADUs. 2 major pieces of adopted legislation were Assembly Bill 881, which was authored by Representative Bloom back in 2019, and AB 68, which was authored by Representative Ting in 2019. Some provisions of AB 881 include when ADUs are created through the conversion of a garage, carport, or covered parking structure, replacement of off-street parking spaces cannot be required by the local agency. Local agencies are also required to ministerially approve when certain requirements are met or deny a permit application for the creation of an ADU within 60 days from the date a completed application is received if there is an existing single-family or multifamily dwelling on the lot. And then AB 881 also prohibits local agencies from requiring parking for ADUs within a half-mile walking distance of public transit. Local agencies are also prohibited from requiring parking for ADUs if the ADU is located within an existing structure. And AB 68 includes a measure that requires local agencies to allow an additional number of ADU units equal to 25% the number of existing multifamily units on the property. This project in particular would only add 9% units to this property, so they do, if they wanted to, they could do this on a larger scale. All right, so moving into some of the benefits of this project, the city's economic development strategic plan notes that limited types of housing options and housing affordability were both concerns from local business owners. The project would allow for 15 new housing units to be added to the city's housing supply in a relatively short amount of time. And these new units will add 6 new studio and 9 one-bedroom apartments to the city, which will help increase the diversity of housing options we have available. Moving into some concerns with the project. Parking is obviously a concern of ours. The inability to require new parking spaces for the project will lead to increased demand for the already limited street parking in the area. The next is amenities. The increase in units at the already large Allure apartment complex will put a strain on existing resident amenities due to increased demand for them. The project will also see the loss of 37 of the 165 existing resident garages that serve the 165 current units. Next is affordability. State ADU law doesn't include affordability mandates for ADUs, so there's no guarantee that these 15 new units would be affordable. And an infrastructure, the proposed project would put pressure on the existing infrastructure in the area, which the city wouldn't be compensated for potentially necessary upgrades. Some available resources. For more information on a specific project, you can contact myself via email at bmcmahon@cityofcamarillo.org. For comments or questions regarding state ADU law, you can contact our local state representatives, Assemblymember Steve Bennett / Assemblymember Jackie Irwin and State Senator Monique Lamone. For tenant rights information, please contact the Area Housing Authority of the County of Ventura, and you can see their email and phone number on screen. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a terrible project for Camarillo, and it's just not a good fit there. Is the California League of Cities or anybody working to challenge that? It doesn't even seem like that would be constitutional to force on here without even considering if it's a good project or not. I mean, it just...
I haven't heard of any challenge to the state law. I know there's new ADU laws coming down too that are sitting on the governor's desk right now.
Yeah.
So they're still fine-tuning this, but yeah, no, I have not heard of any legal challenges to the ADU law.
Because I understand the concept, and in certain projects, maybe it would make sense, but this one seems like it just, there's no common sense that goes with it. And then, I mean, do we get to vote on it tonight? If we're not going to recommend it, we can't even vote on it?
No, there's no action required by the planning commission. This is a project.
They don't want to know what we think.
Right. We want to make you guys aware of, what's happening in our city, and also inform the public and the people that live in this project that, what's being proposed now, what could be proposed. This is our first application we received, and, we probably will receive more.
Yeah, if this is the precedent, man, it's just, I don't think it's good for our community at all. But anyway, that's my take on it. I wish I could vote no on it, but we can't.
I would add a comment. The law does say that you have 60 days to approve or deny. So that it would indicate that there are some circumstances under which it could be ministerially denied. I saw no mention of public safety, access ways for fire departments and their apparatus that they drive. So my hope and expectation, at least from my what I represent, would be that staff would be very critical of these projects that come in that do have such a serious impact. And while the impacts might be areas that Sacramento has limited our ability to act, they also have impacts on areas that we absolutely have a right to act to protect our community from those things that would put our citizens at danger. And in a project such as this seems kind of wrought with problems that would create access issues for both law enforcement and fire, emergency medical services, and those topics do deserve to become forefront in these types of projects moving forward. So while parking and street congestion is sort of off the board, I get that. I think other things need to come front and center, and this city needs to be very active in ensuring that moving forward. And that's this man's opinion. Thank you.
If I may comment on that, so the project has been routed to the reviewing agencies and departments. So we do have comments from like fire, for example, and the state law says that they must meet all our development standards. So they have to meet those standards for fire and, for safety and all that stuff. So when we have, you mentioned we have 60 days to, approve this permit, it's approve this permit, building permit. So they have to really front load everything. Normally the process is you go and you get entitled, then you go to land development, and then you go to, building and safety, then you have your building permit. Well, now they have to front load everything. So we send it to everybody and we get a list of everything that they need to do. And we're like, okay, well, here you go. It's not, we can't approve it now, but by law, we have to give them a list, like a pathway forward. And that's all the concern. So it's kind of like the conditions of approval are kind of being, brought up in front. And, you have to do this for safety. You have to do this for the fire apparatus, and, so they can get to their valve, their fire, sprinkler valve here. So we're doing that, and we're being very cautious, and, making sure that we, analyze all this, to the fullest extent.
Thank you. And I would hope that we're joining in partnership with the first responders in the community to ensure that they understand the implications. We're all busy, and sometimes approval of things like that are ancillary duties for law enforcement. I can say that having come from from the first responder career path. And so I hope that we're being good partners in educating them on the implications of their decisions, so that it's not rubber stamped.
Yes, we are. So.
Thank you.
Did you have some comments?
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation. I was going to ask what your process looks like. Understand that it's ministerial, but there's still some pretty detailed review, and I imagine that you're scrutinizing it closely. So I appreciate that. And I'm concerned about the precedent that this sets as well. And I very much appreciate you understanding that it's ministerial, it's completely within your purview, bringing it to the Planning Commission, and promoting public transparency and engaging the public. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I too appreciate you bringing it to our attention this early in the process. Will we see this project again? Will this be brought before the Planning Commission?
No, this project will be reviewed and, reviewed, I should say. I'm not going to say approved or denied, but reviewed, because it's still under review, at the staff level. So this is the only time you'll see the project.
All right. That's unfortunate to me, because we have a site plan that has very, very little detail on it. We know that there's a protrusion of landscaping curbs into the drive aisles. We understand there's a cutoff of what's called a dead drive aisle. We understand that the site is already cramped in terms of drive mobility, accessibility, and I'd be very interested to hear what the fire department would have to say on this. Public health and safety cannot be compromised on any project, and so I have grave concerns about this project moving forward, especially with a lack of information, and especially in that we want to have an opportunity to really review a set of drawings that would tell us actually what's happening with the site.
I was a little confused as to where these are going. Are these actual garages, or are these garage spaces underneath the buildings?
Yeah, so the current setup of the building is the first floor along the drive aisles has garages there, and then everything above it's apartment units. So they're taking certain portions of garages and converting them into ADUs. So these ground floor garages are going to go away as part of the project.
But are these really garages, or are they assigned parking spaces below the building?
These are resident garages that they pay for.
Well, when I read the site, they say that they pay for assigned spaces underneath the buildings. And you can see there's like openings that you can see when you drive up there, that you can see this underground parking. So those don't look like enclosed garages. When I looked at the overview on the satellite, I could see some other buildings that I didn't know if those were small garages or storage buildings, because you looked like there were garage doors on them.
Right, so the way this complex was designed is the middle building there that's the most visible from the street. That one in particular has the most units in the complex, but it doesn't have enough room to accommodate all those. Well, I guess when they designed it, they felt that it probably wouldn't have been the best location to put garages, and they needed to be smart with their space. So what they did was they put underground open parking under that particular building.
Okay.
But everywhere else in the complex, the ground floor is garages.
Okay. I did notice that a couple of the cities that I found online that were dealing with multifamily garages and conversions, ADUs, have set specific kind of guidelines and rules for what they will allow. Will we consider going into this, since this is the first one that we've seen, but developing some specific standards that would go into our ordinance for this particular type of construction?
So, yes, I mean, we're always flexible and open to, new development standards that other cities are doing, so we can definitely look into that. We'd have to amend our ordinance and
Right.
get it in place because we have to be, have objective standards. But yeah, we're definitely open to considering that. I mean, they would have to go to the city council, they're the policymakers, they'd have to make the decision, but we could look into it a little bit and then see if they're willing to, if they want to pursue that.
Yeah, I saw a couple ideas that were nice specifics that would be able to be, have if we had them. And then as far as being affordable units, do we have any teeth to make them all affordable as far as in the government code when it says accessory dwelling units provide housing for at below market prices within existing neighborhoods, and they specifically say particularly lower and middle income earners, and also accessory dwelling units offer low-cost housing to meet the needs of existing and future residents. Do we have any teeth in this that we could require that they all be affordable housing,
Unfortunately, we do not.
even though that's what the code says they're calling for on these?
Yeah, yes, exactly. That we do not have the authority to go ahead and require them to all be affordable. In fact, we've had conversations with the state about that, and they actually said that's an impediment to creating these units because I know that's kind of we rock back a little bit too because that's like their goal to create affordable housing.
Right.
Yet
That's what it says.
I know, but when we talk about it, it was they mentioned that could be an impediment to creating the ADUs. So we cannot require 100% of them to be affordable.
Well, I know we had the two comments come in, one that was positive, but the one that was a negative really did bring out all of the issues that will, that will come out from this. And because if you start taking those parking places away that are under the buildings, and if all of the other open spaces are filled with additional cars of the residents that live there, there is no more parking in there. Unless they take out, if those other buildings that I was seeing are just storage buildings or something, take out those storage buildings and make parking places. But I don't know, I haven't driven through down that street at night to see how bad it is.
It was gated, I couldn't get in.
Yeah.
the place, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going by what I could see on the satellite views. So I really didn't expect it to be the spaces underneath the buildings. I expected it to be those outside spaces.
One other question. Do you know the vacancy rate in these apartments or for these and across the city? I know there are some cities that require registration and that information to be provided.
We don't require that in the city here, so and we don't know the vacancy rate of that, apartment complex.
And there's nothing in, when it talks about in multifamily, because these are garages, the fact that it's used versus unused area doesn't apply here.
Are you referring to the parking requirement?
The requirements for multifamily, that it can be in unused spaces, that they can put the ADUs in areas that aren't being used. But because these are garages, then it's kind of a different consideration.
Yeah, it is different in regards to the parking requirement and like the what we can and cannot do. And then our senior planner, James Fowler, will kind of explain that.
I spend a lot of time on ADUs, so I'm glad to come up and talk about them, even if it's a sore subject. But so specifically for these garages, ADU law prohibits cities from requiring replacement parking for a garage that is, I guess, destroyed by being converted to an ADU. So you can't replace the garage that's destroyed, basically, and you also can't require the new ADU that's going into the existing structure to have parking. So from both angles, we can't require the parking we lost or new parking for the ADU. As far as whether it matters whether it's like non-livable space, actually they're using a provision in the ADU code that says you may convert non-livable space. So that's actually central to what they're doing, the fact that it is non-livable space.
Okay. Non-livable versus non-usable. Yeah, because I know somewhere I read that if you were converting the garages, you didn't have to supply another garage, but you did have to put in at least one parking spot on site for each bedroom.
So that's how it was in years past, but this legislation has really changed year by year, and the current state of affairs is because it's part of an existing structure that's being converted, we can't even require a space for the ADU. That's the unfortunate reality.
And it's confusing, I know, reading through it, because I was just reading through what's online currently, in the ADU handbook, which is all marked up with underlines and new words in red and blue and all this other kind of stuff. But that was still in part of it, but it's hard to figure out when you read it in one part, does it apply everywhere, or is there something that supersedes and jumps over that? So, any other comments? Not a
I
good
don't have any
project.
other comments except to, I guess, repeat our appreciation for you bringing this to our attention, and hope that you include us as early on in any other similar projects. We want to stay with this. We want to be informed. It's important to the city, and it's important to our overall planning. Thanks.
Okay, so we don't get to vote on this at all. So, we have a director's report.
Yes, just a short one this evening. We do have several items tracking for the October 3rd meeting. So that one we plan on having. However, the October 17th meeting is kind of up in the air a little bit. We may have to reschedule that meeting for a later date. We're kind of thinking in November, but we're still not sure yet. We're kind of seeing how the projects are tracking, and it's also the state of the city that same afternoon. So they're not at the same time, but we do have other items too that aren't quite ready yet for the 17th, and we want to make sure that we can get them to before you guys in a timely manner, so they don't have to wait until December.
Okay. And currently, we don't have any meetings scheduled in November, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So if you put one in, that would be just in addition to?
Yes, it would be basically, what we'd officially do is cancel the 17th, and then we'd do a special meeting. So, but I'll be in communication, with you guys first.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from the commission? Okay, with that, whoops. I'll take that back.
There's someone that wants to speak on the ADU, make a comment.
Oh.
If we can open it up for public comment.
Okay.
On the item.
Okay. All right. With that information, we will open up for public comments. If somebody? No? Okay, we will not open up with comments. And I did mention that we did have the 2 written comments that came in, one that was for and one that was opposing, so. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.